So last time we were at Morongo Casino, it did not go well. In fact, it went a little bit like this. Today, we're gonna rectify that situation, we hope. Let's get in there, let's get to it. All right, guys, we're back, and that was a crazy session. So many hands to go over. And speaking of that, I'm not going to be doing a room review for Morongo because it's a temporary space right now that they're doing. They had an old poker room, and they're building a completely new one. But in the meantime, they've moved the current poker room to this, it's like a placeholder room. So seeing as it's not fair to judge a place by just a temporary room, I'm going to hold off on the Morongo review until they move to that new room, which I think is in June or something like that. So anyway, it's fine because I don't know if you guys could see, but there's a ton of hands to go over. This is a packet of hands. Let's just get into it, all right? We were looking for redemption today. Last time I played at Morongo, total punt. Today, let's see how it went. In the first hand, we opened 7-6 of hearts from under the gun. Sure, it could be a fold in a lot of games, but in this particular game, I felt like it was okay, so I made it $12 to go. Under the gun 1 makes the call, and middle position makes the call, so we go 3 ways to a flop, which comes ace, jack, 5 with 1 heart. So obviously it's not great for our hand, but it does hit our perceived range from an under the gun open. We should have all the monsters here, so I continue for $20. Under the gun 1 makes the fold, middle position makes the call. I've played with him before and he's fairly sticky, very loose player, so I'm not too worried about it going to the turn. The turn is the deuce of diamonds, and I want to apply some more pressure on his holdings. I think he could be floating the flop with a lot of not so good hands, so now I put in a bet for $50 and he thinks about it for a bit and lets it go this time. So nice to take down the first pot of the session with 7 high. In the second hand, we're on the button with king jack of spades. There's 4 limpers ahead of me, and I definitely want to raise it up here with a hand this good in position, so I make it $20 to go. No need to go too big when I'm in position. Middle position and cutoff make the call, so we go 3 ways to a flop, which comes ace, 9, 4, rainbow. They check to me, and I put in a c-bet of $15, which might seem small, but on a board this dry in position, I like to bet small on the flop and then barrel a little heavier on the turns. So that's what I decide to do here. I bet 15, middle position makes the call, and the cutoff folds. So we're heads up to a turn, which is the queen of diamonds. Another good card for my range. He checks it over to me, and I want to apply some more pressure now and take it down, obviously with king high and a gutter. Not doing too good if he continues, so I put in a bet for $60 this time. He thinks about it for a bit, lets it go. So we get the second one through. Going all right so far. Moving on to the third hand. So those first 2 hands went okay. Then we ran into some problems on this next one. Middle position was going nuts, and he punted away all his chips but $20. He's under the gun in this next hand, and he blind goes all in for his last 20. Next person to act makes it $40 to go. Folds to me on the button, and I have ace jack suited. And my mentality is the min raiser after the blind all in is trying to isolate that dead money, the blinds plus the $20. And I think he just wants to collect that as easily as possible with the min raise. It doesn't look too strong from my point of view. So I want to put in a 3-bet here and re-steal the pot if possible. And if I can't take it down pre-flop, I'm happy to play in position with ace jack suited. So I make a 3-bet to 120. And at this point, I realized the dealer is saying he didn't make it 40 to go. He made it 60, but I heard 40. Apparently he was raising 40 on top of the 20. So my 3-bet was just, or technically it's a 4-bet after the blind all in. It was just a click back, a min raise. So it folds back to him and he thinks about it for a bit and puts in the call. So we both started the hand with around $400 at this point. And I'm not too thrilled with my sizing, obviously pre-flop, but we're just gonna have to adjust and play hands accordingly. So we go heads up to the flop, jack 6-3 with 2 diamonds. To my surprise, he goes all in on this flop, which I found super interesting because if he had any great hands, he should just check call or check jam all in. And if he had a jack, he also would do that, I think. So I'm not too sure what's going on here. I'm not sure what he's representing. If he had a hand like aces, kings, or queens, I expect him to re-jam pre-flop. And if he had a hand like jacks, why the hell would he just open jam if he flopped that strong? If he had a hand like tens, he should be worried about me having all the overpairs in a jack. So I'm gonna be real, I wasn't too sure what was going on in this spot. You know, I was the pre-flop 4-better, so he should be checking over almost his entire range to me. So I don't know, I'm curious to see what you guys think. He went all in for around 250 and the pot is around 250, so I'm getting 2-1 on a call here. Don't think there's much decision to be had. I make the call and he shows pocket queens, which I don't know, I thought it was very interesting the way he played it, but I mean, it worked out for him. He got the max because we can't connect on the turn or river. I don't know, I'm curious to see what you guys think about that. I think pre-flop obviously is the most questionable spot. Once we're in the situation on a flop of jack high with top pair, top kicker, getting 2-1, I don't think we can go anywhere, but time to reload and run it back up. We can't book another loss at Morongo, so just gotta keep pushing. We reload for another 300 and move on to the next hand, in which we get pocket sixes in the big blind. There's 5 limpers and I don't see a reason to squeeze here. I wouldn't mind a raise, but I'm fine just going multi-way and navigating some streets. So I check and the flop helps us out. It comes 9-9-6. We flop a boat here, pretty good situation. Small blind checks, I check, and it checks all the way around, unfortunately. The turn is decent, it's a 10, which should give a lot of people a pair, and also the occasional 8-7 gets us straight now. But I think 8-7 is betting that flop most times. Now the small blind leads out for $12. I make the call, hoping to induce from players behind me, but unfortunately, they all make the fold. So not the biggest pot that I want when I flop a full house, but we'll take what we can get at this point, being stuck 300 bucks. The river is a brick and he leads out for 12 again. I think it's a pretty easy raise spot. The question is how much, and he doesn't seem too strong here. So I go with a sizing where definitely don't want him going anywhere. I make it 35 to go and he still goes in the tank for a while and eventually makes the crying call. Obviously we're good if he's taking that long to call. I show and we collect a small pot, so just gotta keep running it up here. Next we get 8-6 of spades from early middle position in a straddled pot. I open a $25, which obviously is questionable, but let's just look past that. The button makes the call, small blind and straddle make the call, so definitely more action than I was expecting here, and it comes king 9-8 with 2 clubs. Checks all the way around. I'm definitely not putting in a C bet with 3 players calling my $25 open. and the turn is another 9. So it checks to me, and at this point, I think anyone with a king should have bet it on the flop. And if they were out of position to me after I check, they should definitely be betting it on the turn. So when it checks to me on the turn, I think I actually have the best hand a lot of the time here. I could also be betting for protection and to charge against draws. So that's what I decide to do. I bet $55 and everyone makes the fold. So pick up a nice little pot there, move on to the next hand. In this next hand, we look down at King Queen of Hearts from the big blind. The straddle is on and there's 2 limps, so I make it $40 to go, and only the first limper makes the call. So we're going heads up to a flop, which comes Queen Jack 10 with 2 spades. I don't mind going either way on this flop, check or bet. There's merit to both, I think. I decided to check it over to him this time, play it a little more cautiously, and exercise some pot control. He checks it back, and I'm definitely fine with that. The turn is pretty decent, I'd say. It's the ace of diamonds, so we turn the nuts here with a king for Broadway. I decided to bet small for value now. I lead out for $40, and he folds pretty quickly and shows us pocket 9s. I decided to show my king this time to him, as I'd already bluffed him a couple of times in the session and I hadn't got a lot of my winning hands to showdown. So just to build some credibility with him, I won't always do this, but I decided to show him the nuts, and he double taps the table as if to say good hand. So that's going to come in as a note in a later hand. For this next hand, I was a bit hesitant to share it with you guys, as it's a play I do very rarely on occasion, and I think it's controversial to say the least. I think a lot of you guys will probably frown upon it and disagree with it, but at the same time, I realize I'm trying to keep this channel as transparent as possible with you guys. No bullshit, so why not? Let's just share it. There's 4 limps, and I have 7-4 offsuit on the button. When I'm getting such a good price and I can play in position, I like to overlimp very marginal holdings such as these, so I toss in the $3. The small blind actually folds and the big blind checks. So we're going multi-way to a flop, which comes King 9 Queen with 2 spades. When it checks all the way to me, something I like to do in position in these spots is bet and get value from draws, and then steal the pot on later streets when draws don't complete. It has absolutely nothing to do with my actual holding. I'm more so playing my opponents and seeing where I'm at in the hand. If I get raised, it's an easy fold, and if draws come in, it's just an easy check and give up spot. So I bet $5. The big blind makes the call, and early position makes the call. Okay, everything's going according to plan so far. I should have been getting raised with any strong hands, and they just called. So we're good to go to the turn, which is a deuce of diamonds, bringing in a second flush draw. Checks to me again, still the same plan as the flop. I bet $20 for value, as strange as that might seem. The big blind folds this time, and the early position player makes the call. So we're going, God, that sun is brutal right now. So we're going heads up to a river, which is an interesting river. It's a deuce of spades. He checks it to me, and it's a bit of a risky card because obviously his flush draws got there, but all his straight draws missed. And we have no showdown value, obviously, with 7 high, so things can get a little sticky when you're trying to do this play. But yeah, I have to put in a bet here and get all his straight draws to fold, and perhaps his second or third pair. And if we get check raised, it's obviously the easiest fold in the world. So I put in a bet, I make it $50 to go. He thinks about it for a bit and makes the fold. And this was actually the player I showed the King of Hearts to in the previous hand for Broadway. And I think that may or may not have played a role. It's hard to tell, but happy that it works out this time. And yeah, essentially it's bluffing for value, as you're expected to get called and then steal it on a later street. Doesn't always work. Sometimes it's a bit risky, but in this spot, it just felt right. And I hope I don't get completely annihilated in the comments for that one. So moving on to the next hand. In the next hand, early position opens to $12. There's a call in middle position, and we look down at pocket aces in the small blind. Pretty sweet spot. So obviously a nice warm 3-bet coming up. I make it $50 to go. They both make the call. So happy to see that. We go 3 ways to a flop, which comes 10-10-5 with 2 spades. They each have a little under a pot size bet left. I think one of them has 140, the other has like 120. So Easy all-in spot. That's what I decided to do. We go all in for, I think it was 130 officially. The early position player goes in the tank for a long time, probably 3 or 4 minutes. Eventually he makes the call. The player behind him gets out of the way quickly. The turn is a brick, and the river is not a good card. It's the queen of spades, so all flush draws get there, and obviously queens now beat us. However, I show my aces and we're good, so I gotta believe it's probably pocket jacks or maybe even a non-believing pocket pair below the tens. I'm not too sure what he had there, but we're happy to scoop and move on to the next hand. After that hand, we were pretty card dead for about an hour. Our stack just dwindled within like a $50 range for a while. There's a lot of hands such as this one where I opened 7-6 of diamonds from late position. The small blind and big blind make the call. The flop was ace 9-4 with no diamond. They both check to me, and I could just check and give up here, but I think a c-bet here is going to work a lot of the time. Unless they have an ace, they just can't really continue. So I put in a cheap bet. I think I made it 12 or 15, and the small blind goes all in for 60. So that's kind of how it went there for a little while. There was also this interesting hand. Early position open a 15. I call in middle position with ace 6 suited, and it could definitely be a fold here, but we're pretty deep and I don't mind it too much. So the small blind also calls, and we go 3 ways to a flop, which comes ace high, but not the best ace high board we could ask for. Under the gun continues here. He bets pretty large. He bets $40. It comes to us, and I put in a call, obviously flopping top pair, not going to go anywhere just yet. Small blind gets out of the way. We go heads up to a turn, which is a brick. He continues on this brick for $115. Pretty sizable bet here. So from this particular player type, elderly gentleman who had not played very many hands, especially not aggressively, honestly, it's probably just a fold pre-flop, but maybe fold on the flop and definitely fold on this turn. So that's what we decide to do and just live to see another hand. This next hand, late position, opens to $12. We look down at pocket queens from the small blind. Out of position, I make it 40 to go. Only he makes the call. So we're heads up to a flop, which is 9-7-5 with 2 hearts. So I want to size up here and charge the max from all his draws. And if I get raised, I'm not going to love it, but we'll just have to evaluate when we get there. So I put in a pretty sizable bet here of $65. He makes the fold this time. That's all right, I'll take it. We move on to the next hand. Next, we look down at ace queen offsuit from the hijack. There's a limp ahead of us, so I make it $15 to isolate. And now the cutoff on my left, who is a fairly aggressive, good player, he 3-bets to 45. The limper folds and it's back on us. So the cutoff is definitely capable of 3-betting light here, as it looks like I'm opening light against the limper's range. He only has around 150 behind, and playing out of position with ace queen offsuit is pretty tough. He can have ace highs and steal the pot a lot when we both miss on the flop. So I decided to just apply max pressure, and I want to see all 5 cards if I'm going to be playing this hand. I want to realize all my equity. I decided to jam all in, and he thinks about it for a bit and makes the fold, so I like my play there. Regardless, it could have gone either way. Obviously, we'd get snapped off by a better hand, but I think I'm fine with the play, and we move on to the next hand. Next hand's fairly interesting. We open a $12 from the hijack with 5-3 of clubs. The button makes the call and the big blind makes the call. The flop comes pretty good for a 5-3 of clubs. It comes 10-6 deuce with the 6 deuce of clubs. So we flop a straight flush draw, a straight draw, and a flush draw. Pretty good for 5 high. So when he checks it over to us, I need to put in a continuation bet here. I make it $20 to go. The button folds and the big blind makes the call. So we're heads up to a turn, which is the king of diamonds. Doesn't look like a great card, but it actually is, because if we did not connect with the flop and we put in a c-bet, the king on the turn could connect with a lot of hands that we would do that with. And so seeing as that perceived range factor is always in play, after he checks it to me, we have a ton of equity, we have 5 high, and we have a decent perceived range on this turn card. So all this equals mandatory bet. I make it $65 to go this time, and he thinks about it for a long time, but eventually lets it go. So we don't have to resort to plan B of making our hand this time. We take it down right here on the turn. Moving on to the next hand. Next, a very tight player limps under the gun. We have pocket 4s next to act, and I think I want to put in a raise here and see what develops. So I make it $15 to continue. Everyone folds except for this gentleman. So we're heads up to a flop, which comes pretty decent. It's ace 3-5. We have a gutter, and it favors our range more than him. So when he checks it over to us, I put in a continuation bet. I make it $10 to go. No need to size too big here on a board so dry. He either has an ace or he doesn't. He makes the call, and at this point, I'm fairly certain he has an ace, so I'm pretty much done with the hand unless we improve, which we actually do on this turn card. It's a 4. So we make a very disguised set here on the turn. He checks, and it's a dream spot. If our opponent has an ace here, we can go for tons of value. So I bet a little over pot here. I think I made it $60 to go. And he thinks about it for a bit and makes the call. So pretty good situation shaping up here until the river is a deuce. So there's a wheel on board now. Awful river card. We're most likely chopping. I don't see what possible 6s he could have in this spot. He checks it over to us, and he has about 200 behind. Pretty easy all-in spot, I think, to block the chop if possible, get maximum fold equity. I expect him to call, and we're going to chop it most of the time, but no harm in going for it. So I shove all in, and he doesn't think about it for too long and makes the call. I show my hand, and he shows ace-queen suited. So pretty dream spot we had there on the turn. Obviously, we were crushed until then, but... So, yeah, we end up chopping. I show my hand, and he says, what does he have? He has a straight? Oh, okay, you're good. And then he goes to muck his hand, and the dealer tells him that he also has a straight. So kind of funny there on the end. It's a bit difficult to get a player off of a chop pot if they don't even know it's a chop pot. Moving on. In this last hand, we open pocket 6s from early position. The button and the big blind make the call. We go 3 ways to a flop, which comes ace king 6 with 2 diamonds. So absolute gin on this flop. It checks to me, and I think in this spot I like a bigger bet because we don't block any of the hands our opponents could have to continue, and also any flush draw should not be folding to just one c-bet. I think it's totally fine to size up here and create maximum value and as big a pot as possible going into the turn. So I make it $35 to go, and unfortunately they both make the fold. So kind of a bummer to end on that note, but somehow after being stuck 300, we still managed to book a win of $200 in this session. We're in for 600 and we cash out for 798 or so. So yeah, that wrapped up the session. I played for about 6 hours and we're able to finally book a win at Morongo and slightly fix the calamity that was the previous session here.
Did you see what they did though? That was cool. They walked off the field and left him out there by himself.
Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy those hands. I hope you guys enjoy the video. If you did, give it a like. It helps the channel grow. Good luck to you guys out there. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, peace.